Well, time for Media Watch now, and James Creedon is with us. And James, starting with that shocking image that everyone has seen today, which highlights the suffering of migrants who are trying to get into the United States. This is, of course, the father and daughter that drowned in the Rio Grande.
And it is really a case of a picture speaking 1,000 words, and we've seen this before, but just to kind of stick with this particular tragedy. First off, it was Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez, a migrant from El Salvador, and his not even 2-year-old daughter Valeria. And it's an image, of course, that if you have any fibre of humanity in you, you can't but be saddened and extremely even upset by this. The little girl is kind of attached to her father, bound to him by his black T-shirt, and media around the world picked up on this. It was a Mexican journalist working for La Jornada that captured the image, Julia Leduc. And as you can see here, the headlines are all pointing to the fact that this, well, it highlights the migrants' border peril. Now, what's also of note about this, apart from you just quickly to point out that there were other images in the last few years that also kind of stirred up a big debate. Do you remember that image from Aleppo of Omran? Now, he hadn't died, but he was caught up in the
image
violence.
of Aleppo, isn't it?
That's right. And at that time, that image went viral. The photographer behind it saying, "I filmed this Syrian boy," but it wasn't a rare case. There were so many other children caught up in it. So it sort of tends to rehumanize a debate a debate, whether it be about migration, whether it be about war. A photo of a child.
Remember, we're talking about human beings here, not just figures and statistics.
Exactly, it rehumanizes everything, and it kind of triggers, I suppose, the debate becomes rehumanized when often it is dehumanized, I think. Then there was, of course, Aylan Kurdi. Many media, including our own, didn't actually broadcast that image because you could see his face, and it was so distressing.
That was
a little boy found washed up on the coast of Turkey, and that highlighted the whole issue around the migrant crisis, the refugee crisis in Europe. Many media making that link between this latest image and the image of Aylan Kurdi, the shocking image from the border and the lessons from Aylan Kurdi. Now, this is an interesting piece from the Columbia Journalism Review. They say, it takes an image for a horrible truth to land with full impact. That's what's similar between these two stories. The image unleashed an immediate outpouring of emotion in both cases. But here's what's interesting. While the image of Aylan Kurdi resonated and it spread like wildfire on social media, did it actually change anything? There's a lot of people focusing now on this issue. And 3 years on, for example, the BBC and other media have found that migrant children are living in horrific conditions in camps in Greece. So you could argue that while this creates an upsurge in emotion, does it really change policies? Not necessarily. But what's sure is that
I think it perhaps made some people more welcoming towards Syrian refugees, if I remember rightly. I think there were, people saying refugees are welcome.
Right. And I guess if there's an upsurge in emotion, it has to impact on some people's attitudes in some way. But of course, this is all, Laura, in the middle. But I
think things are forgotten very quickly in this news cycle. But
this is, of course, in the middle of a very, very tense
there's a debate going on in the Senate
US
tonight
about these camps, about migration generally, even the use of the word concentration camps, which is a controversial choice. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that what she's saying is that the use of this term is justified. It's not hyperbole. The conditions of children being held in these camps, and there have been lots of reports about the inhumane conditions imposed on hundreds of migrant children. AP have reported on it. Washington Post have reported on it, with lots of details about children sleeping on floors, children not having baths or clean clothes, and actually
children having
cruel
to look
treatment.
After babies, really.
But you see, you have all these reports and testimonies, but somehow.
Well, there's a debate going on.
It's an image that will really speak.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely true. And there's a debate going on in the Senate tonight.
Yes,
we'll be talking about that a bit later. But back here in France, talking about images, a lot of them are. Misused, aren't they? And a lot of images, you're not sure where they come from.
Right.
And people do spread fake news online. Yes. The government is trying to crack down on that in France.
Well, there's a proposal by the French Junior Minister for Digital Affairs, Cédric O. And this is not the first time this idea has come up. He's saying, look, we need an ethics council of journalists in France to sort of to sort out fake news and to identify media that are disseminating fake news. Now, he points to, for example, Russian media operating in overseas, such as Sputnik and Russia Today, saying that they're trying to influence democracy. They're influencing parties that might arrive in power in France. He's basically saying that they're supporting the National Front and others, and that there needs to be a pushback against this. So what he's saying is, if journalists don't organise themselves and create some kind of ethical council, the state will intervene. And in fact, a report has been ordered by the French government saying that they could give there wouldn't be sanctions according to this report's advice to the French government, but it's proposing that there would be, what would you say, advice proffered. So not sanctions, but advice proffered. Now, a lot of people don't like this idea, Laura. You've got what he's basically saying is this is a threat to our democracy and something has to be done. And if journalists don't do something about it, we'll do something about it. But you have various journalists sort of chiming in. France's increasingly disturbing approach to fake news, telling journalists to tackle the problem or the state will do it. The French government announces an intention to impose an order on journalists that would regulate fake news. The people
Should the
not
government
liking
have
this
such a
idea.
say over what is published and what isn't published? Yeah.
Exactly. This is a researcher saying this is a threat to democracy, and another person saying here, this is an historian, Christian Delporte, saying that bringing journalists to heel or subjugating journalists is unacceptable. And Russia, if it's Russia Today or other media, that if they are breaking the law with fake news, then they can be the courts can deal with that.
Those laws already exist. All right, James, we have to leave it there. But thanks very much indeed.